Alright, so welcome to the second lecture of this course, and in this lecture we're just going to learn how to download Python. So the reason we need to download Python is because we have to get that IDLE in which we write the Python code. It's absolutely necessary to download Python before we start writing any of the Python syntax. So first thing first, what I want you to do is head over to python.org. And what python.org is, So what python.org is, it's basically the official site of the Python programming language. Over here you can have documentation, you can download stuff, and it's a really nice place. So I definitely suggest later on, whenever you're free, check out the site. You can check out the documentation, the community, some success stories, stuff like that. But what we're going to be doing is, if you scroll down a bit, or you can just go ahead to the download section, and you're going to download for Mac OS X 3.4.3. Now, if you're on a Windows, it should probably say download for Windows 10 or Windows 8, whatever your version is. And you want to select Python 3.3 over here. In case you're not seeing something, what you can always do is scroll down a little further, and you'll see this download icon over here. Go ahead and select Python 3.4.3. So it says all this good stuff. It was released on February 25th, 2015. Major new features, stuff like that. We don't really have to use any of that. Basically, take a look at this stuff, the files. So if you're on a Windows, definitely use the one that was for an OS Windows. So probably the Windows x86-64 MSI installer, or you might do the one underneath that, the Windows x86 MSI installer. So if you're on a Windows machine, definitely click one of those. If you're on a Mac OS X, obviously do the one which has the Mac OS X. So I do have the latest version of Mac OS X, which is higher than 10.6, so I'm going to select this one. Okay, and again, it just depends on your machine, what you have. And now you're going to see a package being installed over here. So it has a 3.4.3 package. And I'm not going to go through, or I'll just open this for you, but I won't be going through the steps of installing Python 3.4.3 again, since I already have. But the concept is quite simple. Same thing for a Windows machine. The package will download. All you need to do is go through the steps, go through each one of these steps, and once it's downloaded, you should be able to see it. So for Mac users, I'll quickly show you how to get to it. Let me just get this file over here. Okay, give it a few seconds. So going into applications, over here, you're gonna see Python 3.4 appear. Okay, so right now my machine is taking a little bit of a longer time than usual. However, if you're on a Windows machine, you're gonna go into your C drive or D drive or whatever your main hard drive disk is, and over there you're gonna see a folder called Python 27 or Python 34. So if you select that, that's where all your IDLE and Python launcher and stuff will be. So as you can see, now my Python 3.4 package has been installed. I have my IDLE, my Python documentation, my Python launcher, and so on. So for the coding part of Python, we'll be doing our maximum coding inside of this IDLE. Okay, so it's over here where we write the code. I'll quickly show you how the IDLE looks like. It's bouncing around right now. It's going to take me a little bit of time. But basically, throughout this course, we'll be using this IDLE to write all of our Python code. Okay, so this is how the IDLE looks like. As you can see right now, I'm using Python 3.4.3. If you hit enter, this is where you write code. So I won't be showing you the code in this lecture. This lecture is all about downloading Python and installing it on our machine. Now, in the next lecture, we'll go ahead and create a very simple Hello World program. See you then. Alright, so in the previous lecture, we learned how to install Python on our machine, okay? And right now, in front of your screen, you should have your shell open. So I'm not going to take too much time here. Basically, I'm going to create a Hello World program. So in almost every single programming language, the first step a beginner takes is creating a Hello World. I'm not sure why that is, but it's always there. So let's go ahead and do that. Basically, we're just going to print out Hello World. So it's not too complicated. What I want you to do is type print, okay, so P-R-I-N-T, and then in brackets, put in quotation marks. So print, bracket, and then quotation marks, hello world. Hello world, okay? So basically what we're doing is we're calling the print function, and we're printing out hello world. There we go. So as you can see right from the start, the syntax of Python is very easy. It's pretty straightforward. I mean, as we go on to more beginner and advanced concepts, you'll realize, hey, Python is actually really easy. So this was a simple hello world program, and this was the end of section 1. So we just learned how to download Python. There was a welcome lecture before that, and in this lecture we learned how to create a very simple hello world program. There was nothing to teach you actually, I just wanted to get that done with. And in the next section we'll move on to the basics of Python. So variables, strings, lists, dictionary, stuff like that. So that's it for my side, and see you in the next section. Hi guys, Avi here. Now, if you've already had some experience with Python, you know how things work, go ahead and skip this section. Basically, if this is your first time programming, or if this is your first time dealing with Python, then this section is for you. In this section, we plan to cover all the basics of Python, from variable types and loops to functions and classes. Now, let's get started. So, in this lecture, we're going to be talking about variables. First thing first, what is a variable? Now, if you've dealt with any programming language before, you know what variable is. A variable is a reserved memory space. Okay? Now, this memory space can hold any value, and it is assigned to a term. So, for example, I can create a variable called maybe my age, so age, and I can set that equal to anything I want. I can set it to maybe a text, so I can set it to some text. I can set it to my actual age, which is a number. I can say age is equal to 14. So here what we've done is we've created a variable whose name is age and whose value is 14. Now, wherever in the Python program I call on age, I'm going to get the value as 14. Okay? Now, the neat thing about variables is you can always change the value. Remember, variables are not permanent. Variables are changeable. So I can now say, hey, my birthday was yesterday. I am now 15 years old. So age is now equal to 15. And if I print out age, I get the value as 15. So this is key. Now, while assigning variables to Python, the concept is very, very simple. First part is the variable name. It can be Bob. It can be John. You can have a capital letter. You can have all caps. Doesn't really matter. You just need an identifier. Now, if I try doing maybe like print is equal to something, I can't do that because print is a function in Python. So these are, the case does matter when you're assigning variables, but however, stick to some normal names. Maybe if you're trying to get a print variable, then my print or something like that. Now with variables, it's very simple. It's a 3-step procedure. You write your identifier, or a variable name, a var name. You use an equal sign to say that, hey, I'm assigning the value to the variable var name, and then what you do is you give it its value. For example, I'm creating var name as an integer with 12. So something like that. Alright, fantastic. So in this lecture, we just gave a very, very brief introduction to variables, how to assign variables, and what variables are. Now, in the next lecture, we'll talk about multiple declaration of variables. See you in the next lecture. Alright, so in the previous lecture, we talked about variables and how to assign them to values. Now, the question comes, let's say you're dealing with a big Python project, and you have to create variables of every single person in your class. Let's say you have 10 people, and each one has, different names. So it's a very tedious project. What you do is maybe something like person 1, set that equal to maybe Abby, person 2, set that equal to James, and on and on. So this would continue on till person 10, and by that time you would have collapsed and you'd be groaning, oh my god, I hate Python. Well, that's not the case. Here we talk about multiple declaration. And all it does is you can assign multiple values to multiple variables in one line. Now, the way it works, well, you can do something along the lines of this. Person 1, person 2, person 3. And I want to set person 1, person 2, and person 3's value as Abby, James and LeBron. Okay, so once I do this, if I now say person 1, I get Abby, person 2, I get James, and person 3, I get LeBron. You see how it made our work a lot more easier? We didn't have any problem of declaring variables. So this is a very nice feature of Python, multiple declaration. Now let's say we had another case. You had one string. Let's call that string as apples. And you had 10 variables. And what you wanted to do was you wanted to assign apples the value to all the 10 variables. So something along the lines of this. var1 is equal to apples. var2 is equal to apples. Whoops. Okay. var3 is equal to apples, right? And so on. So right now, as you can see, it's giving me an error. var3 is equal to apples, invalid syntax. If you haven't guessed already, let's just go through this error as a learning process. You cannot give spaces while implementing or creating your variables. Your variables must be one word. You can do maybe something like my name is, so joining all the words together, but in the end, your variable name must be one word. Anyways, going back to our main point, we wanted to set each variable, var1, var2, and var3 as apples without having to do it repetitively. How would we do that? Well, there's also the concept of multiple assignment, where I can say var1 is equal to var2, whoops, is equal to var2, is equal to var3, which is equal to apples. Isn't that neat? So now, if I call on var2 or var3 or even var1, all three of these variables have the value of apples. Fantastic. So let's quickly recap what we learned in this lecture. We learned about multiple declaration, where you can assign 3 variables, 3 different values in just one line. And then you also learned about how you can do multiple assignment. 3 variables can also have the exact same value. Fantastic. So in the next lecture, we'll talk about data types. If you don't know what data types are, let me give you a quick hint. What we have been using so far have all been data types. See you in the next lecture. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started with data types. Right now, I think the shell is looking a bit crowded. So what I'm going to do is, I believe there is an option for me to restart shell, but that won't do anything actually right now. So I'm just going to close my IDLE, or yes, and I'm going to reopen this again just to make it a bit more easier for you guys so that you're not too confused about what's going on the screen. So my IDLE is taking a bit of time to load. There we go. And let me get into the screen size. All right. So we're now talking about data types. So what is a data type? Well, the data stored in a variable, right? Our age variable, our name variable, can be of many types. So far we've dealt with numbers, right? And we've dealt with text, which we call as strings. The remaining 3 main data types, or the standard data types, are lists, tuples, and dictionaries. Now we'll get to these 3 later on in the following few lectures. Right now we're just talking about numbers. This whole lecture, let's just talk about numbers. How does this work? So we've already dealt with the basics of numbers. So age is equal to 10, var him is equal to 15 or 35. So you know the basics of how to add these numbers, right? And that's basically the core concept. Now what we want is we want to learn, hey, how do I add variables? How do I subtract variables? So the way we do that is with something called operators. Now, you must have learned probably in pre-K actually what operators are. Addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. The 4 simple operators. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 variables, age 1, set that as my age, and age 2, set that as maybe I believe my dad's age, which is 40. And let's say I gave you the puzzle, create a 3rd variable, age 3, which has the sum of age 1 and age 2. How would you do that? Well, to the layman, it's sort of obvious, but with Python, it's quite simple. the way we're going to do this is age 3 is going to be equal to age 1 plus age 2. So this is where we use operators. Now, if you print out age 3's value, we get 54. It's that simple. Now, we've used addition. Let's use subtraction, multiplication, and division. Age 1 minus age 2, what do we get? Minus 26. Age 1 divided by age 2, we get 0.35. And age 1 into age 2, again, note, the into sign is an asterisk sign that you get by shift 8. We get 560. Now, the last operator I want to talk about here, at least for arithmetic operators, I can't speak today, is modulus. So the modulus operator, all it does is it gives you the remainder of a division, okay? Right now, we divided age 1 by age 2 and got 0.35. What do you think the remainder is when we divide age 1 by age 2? Well, if you're good at mathematics, age 1 mod age 2, which is percent sign, you're going to get 14. Why? Because 40 or 14 is not divisible by 40 in the sense that not even by 1. So you get 0, remainder 14. Okay? So these are the main 5 operators that you're going to use in Python. Now, in the next lecture, we're going to be talking about strings. So adding strings, how strings work, and stuff like that. See you in the next lecture. Hi guys. Now, before I start, I just want to point out Python is a fantastic language to learn. Now, if you're learning this as your first programming language, that's amazing because Python is probably, for my sake at least, one of the easiest programming languages to learn. Now, let's get on to strings. So, strings in Python, as we've already seen, are characters denoted in quotation marks, right? So I could say a variable my name and set it in a value of quotation marks, some characters, right? Let's do my actual name for Python's sake. And we've talked about adding, so operators, addition, stuff like that. So my quiz or my question here right now is, I'm going to create a variable, first name, set that equal to Avi. I'm going to create a second variable, second name, set that equal to Jane. I should have actually created the last name, but that's fine. And now what I want you to do is create a variable called full name, which has the sum of full first name and second name. Now, if you're already a step ahead of me, concept's quite simple. First name plus second name, and if you now print out full name, you get Avi Jane. So you see this error of a space, right? And probably the easiest way we can get rid of that is by adding a quotation marks in the middle with a space. So first name plus quotation marks with a space plus second name. So now if we print out full name, we will now get Avi Jane. Awesome. Now the question I give to you is, suppose I give you this text, Avinash, and then gibberish, okay? And the goal, or sorry, I was actually supposed to assign that to a variable. So random should be equal to, and then let me just copy this, Command C. All right, random is equal to Avinash, gibberish, blah, blah, blah. And the goal I'm trying to give you here is, hey, I want you to return me Avinash. That's it. I don't want any of the gibberish stuff. I don't want the space I have over here. All I want is this clear and simple Avinash. How do I do that? Well, thanks to Python, we now have the slice operator. Now, the core concept of slice is you can get or you can slice any part of the string from wherever to wherever. The way it works, you type in random and then you type the 2 square brackets. And in the square brackets, let's go give it a try. So I'm going to go through several example cases so that you get the idea of what's happening, and then we'll actually slice out Avinash. Now, first example case. Let's say you just wanted the first letter or a single letter. Hey, what's the 10th letter in this statement? You're going to say random 10. What does it give out? B. If you actually wanted to count, Avinash is 7, 8, 9, 10. So you're probably wondering, hey, Avinash is 7 plus the space 9, 10. Why has it given me B instead of what I think is I? And the reason it's done this is is because the indexing of almost everything in Python starts at zeros. When we get to arrays or actually lists and dictionaries, indexing starts at 0. So think about it like this. The first character in the string, its position is the 0th position, then 1, then 2, then 3. For example, now if I wanted to get the actual 10th position, I do 10 minus 1, right? If you wanted to get the xth position in the string, you do x minus 1. It's that simple. So if I wanted to get the actual 10th position, I do random 9 and I'd get I. Cool. So the next case is I want to get a slice. Let's say from the first character to the 4th character. How do I do that? Well, we've talked about this. So what's the first character in the list? Well, the index position is 0. So we do random, and then using the slice function, we do 0. Now we say colon, hey, we got the first position, where do we want to go up till? Well, we're going to say, let's say I want to go to maybe the, let's say Avi. So I believe that's the 3rd. So 0 to 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, but it won't count the 3. Exactly. So the slice function here, what it's saying is, give me the first position, right? So where do you want me to slice from? And then give me 1 after your end position. For example, I wanted Avi. A is 0, V is 1, I is 2. Instead, I gave 0 to 3 so that it returns me 0, 1, 2. The last one, 3, isn't counted. Now with this knowledge, go ahead, do a quick challenge here. Give me Avinash, or whatever statement you've given me or written, give me your name. So I'm going to pause the video. You should hopefully do this. It's actually just one simple statement. Let's take a look. Alright, hopefully you managed that. If you didn't, that's absolutely fine. We're going to do random 0, okay? And like I've talked about, my name is how many characters? It's 7, right? So let's go ahead and put in 7. Now, if you realize, I've already thought one step ahead. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then one more, which is 7. So 0 to 7, and I get Avinash. Fantastic. Now, before I end this lecture, there's one more thing I want to cover. Let's say I wanted everything from the 3rd character. So I wanted Nosh gibberish. What would I do then? Well, it's actually quite simple. I'm going to use the slice function and say random from the 3rd character, which is 2, to everything after that. Random 2 colon. And once I do that, I get Inosh, gibberish, blah, blah, blah. So these are a few simple functions that you can use with the splice. So whenever you have a string and you're trying to get a specific string out of that string, you can use the splice function. Fantastic! So we learned a lot in this lecture. First thing first, we learned about strings, how to add strings, adding that extra gap. After that, we learned how to get a specific string out of the main string. So searching and splicing. That's the core concept. Nice. Now, in the next lecture, what I want to talk about is the next data type. So we've discussed about integers, we've talked about strings. Let's go ahead and move on to lists, okay? See you in the next lecture. Alright, so in the last lecture we talked about strings. We discussed how we can split strings, slice strings, how strings work, and so on. And again, there are several functions that we can use with strings, and we'll get to them later in the course. But basically, I just wanted to give you a quick introduction on how strings work. Now we get on to lists. So, for example, let's say I had to go to maybe Fred Meyer or Target or any shopping store that's maybe near you. And I was creating a list. So, let's create a shopping list of the things I need to buy. And I'm going to be using a string here. So I have a shopping list. Maybe I need eggs. I might need some carrots. Oh, I need milk, cherries, and let's add one more, apples. Okay. So let's say I had to go to a shopping store and I had all these different items that I had to buy. So right now what the problem is that if I need to know what's the first item in my list, what do I have remaining, stuff like that, I can't do that with a string. Right now, if I just want to find out what's my first item, I'll have to do shopping list and then use some splicing stuff, but that also depends on if I know the number of characters. Right now, if I just print shopping list, I'm just going to get egg, carrots, milk, cherries, and apples. There's no specific way to find out what's my first item, what's my third item, what's the last item I have to get. And this is where the Python term lists and the more general term arrays comes in. So again, let's create a new list, shopping list 2.0 or 2, and let's create an array over here. And the way to create an array is we're going to be using 2 square brackets, and in the square brackets you're now going to add your items. So our first item was eggs, comma, our second item was carrots, comma, third item was milk, cherries, apples. So these lists, right, they're the most versatile data type available in Python. All the items, the items in the list can be of any data type, strings, numbers, etc., etc., but they can be. So this is our shopping list in which we've used an array. Now, for example, if I print out shopping list 2, what do I get? I get eggs, carrots, milk, cherries, apples in square brackets. And now you're wondering, hey, what's the difference between shopping list 2 and shopping list 1? The only difference I can see is that we're adding these square brackets. Well, guys, the whole point of arrays is that we can now use indexing to get our values. Whenever you create an array, and again, in arrays, you can add any value whatsoever. You could have added integers, floats, you could have added decimal values, stuff like that into the array. Right now, since it's a shopping list, I've used strings. But the whole point of arrays is they've given each value an index number. So I'm at the grocery store, and I've checked marked eggs, but I'm not sure what is my next item in my list. So what we can do now is if we do shopping list 2, and then in square brackets right next to it, 2, we get milk. So you're probably wondering, well, why didn't we get carrots? It's a second value. Well, think about it like this. Just like we talked about characters in the last lecture, with lists, it's the exact same thing. The indexing in a list, in a string, in almost all data types in Python, it starts at 0. So the eggs index is 0. If I want to know what is my first item in my list, I'm going to use shopping list 2, and then in square brackets, the first item, which is 0. If I want to find out, hey, what's my fourth item in my list? I'm going to say shopping list 2, and then n minus 1. If I want to know the fourth, it's 4 minus 1, 3. So shopping list 3, it's cherries. So this is where lists become more and more useful. And this isn't the end. There's tons of functions you can add with lists. Right now, all we've done is we've accessed values. Let's say I was at the shopping store or at the grocery store, and I'm like, wait, I don't need milk anymore. I realized I have 2 cartons at home. Instead, I need chocolate. How do I update the value in list? Right now, if we were using a string, there was no way we could do that. We'd have to rewrite the string over and over again, waste of time. However, with lists, it's quite simple. First, find the position. What's our position? It's going to be 2. So all we're going to say here is shopping list 2 should now be equal to chocolate. Do you see what we did there? All we're saying, string object does not support item assignment. The error I was getting here is, sorry about that. It's shopping list 2, since the variable name was shopping list 2. So here, in case I want to change milk to chocolate, now typing in chocolate again. And if I print out shopping list 2, we get eggs, carrots, chocolate, cherries, apples. Isn't that cool? So you can update values in lists. You can change, you can delete, you can add. These lists are the most versatile object you'll find in Python. And as we get along in the course, as we add or dive deeper into Python, lists will be one of the main objects we use every day. So play around with this, and in the next lecture, I'll be showing you some cool functions that we can use with lists. See you then. Alright, so let's get started.